We're back, and I hope you all had a lovely 6 or so months since the last time we spoke. I'm still trying to get back up to speed with things given everything that's gone on, but I figured that as a way to get back into the swing of things, we'd kick this season off with something a little bit out of the ordinary. You know, nothing too heavy, just something to get the juices flowing again. That's why today, we're going to be checking out a Canucksploitation flick that, well, let's just say its personality outshines its shortcomings. 1987's Beyond the Seventh Door, which was recommended to me by Triv of Trivial Theatre. Thank you very much for this little slice of fried gold. It's a sort of a puzzle action thriller movie, for lack of a better descriptive. Quite honestly, it reminded me very much of those old adventure TV game shows like The Crystal Maze, Fort Boyard, or to a lesser extent, Legends of the Hidden Temple. The film follows the misadventures of Boris and Wendy. Boris has just got out of prison on a minor robbery charge. The film says he's 36. Yeah, not buying that. Anyway, he heads directly from the prison to a diner where, by sheer chance, he reconnects with Wendy, who's clearly very unhappy to see him and wants basically nothing to do with him. Boris and Wendy had a bit of a fling a few years ago, you see, but Boris fell into a bad crowd, got Wendy in on the act, and while Wendy managed to get away from that kind of scene relatively unscathed, Boris fell deeper and deeper into crime and eventually wound up arrested. Wendy's past continues to cause her some troubles though, as she's currently working as some kind of servant or maid in a small castle in the sticks owned by one Lord Breston. Boris is aware of this fact, however, and has come to the diner specifically with a proposal for Wendy. You see, Boris wants to go clean, but he hasn't got the capital to well and truly leave his life of crime behind. He's also aware that Lord Breston is rumoured to have a monumental fortune hidden away somewhere in the castle that his estate has protected for over 200 years. His proposal is a simple one. Wait till night time, then have Wendy let him into the castle through a back door. The pair will explore the castle for the treasure, and when they find it, they'll take as much as they can carry before eloping out of the country to live out the rest of their days somewhere nice where they can maybe try and start over. Wendy isn't entirely convinced of the latter half of that plan, but as long as Boris cuts her in on the treasure, she reluctantly agrees. And so, a few nights later, Boris arrives at the castle, Wendy lets him in, and after a little bit of exploration, they eventually arrive at a big red padlocked door. It takes them only a few moments to pick the lock, but when they get the door open, they find another corridor and another door with a slightly more complex lock behind it. On cracking that lock, they find another corridor, and after getting about halfway down it, a pre-recorded message from Lord Breston is tripped in which he welcomes them as thieves to his humble abode. He makes them aware that he knows they're in his castle and that they're looking for his family fortune. He explains that the treasure's seen many attempts at being pinched over the last 200 years and that basically, if they find it, they can keep it. He also then sets in motion the first trap, locking the exit behind them and telling them they have 20 seconds to get to the end of this corridor or a shutter will close and they'll have a slow and undignified corridor death. Eek, that's a rough one. Luckily they make it through the shutters and down a ladder, and it's here basically that the bulk of the film establishes itself. It's revealed that from here on in, Boris and Wendy will have to traverse a series of rooms containing 6 deadly puzzles, alongside one final situation. Get the puzzles right, you progress to the next room. Take too long or get the wrong answer and you're dead. And, to add insult to injury, while Breston gives the pair a hint to solve the puzzles for the first 2, and the first 2 puzzles are bollocks, he stops talking to them almost entirely after that, leaving them to try and solve these things unaided. In a breakneck 76 minutes of puzzle-bound perplexity, will Boris and Wendy strike it rich? Will Lord Breston preserve his fortune for another century? And is this SOV? Is it film on SOV? Is it SOV on film? It could go either way, honestly. Anyway, all this and more will be answered if you check out Beyond the Seventh Door. It's fair to say that this is very much a personality feature. While the script itself is light and breezy enough, it's not the reason you're here. The reason you're here is for the film's star, Lazar Rockwood, a more than eccentric actor who's basically a Gen 1 Canadian Tommy Wiseau. He has similar looks, similar mannerisms, his accent is totally nondescript, he uses slang from multiple different countries, most of the time he's unintelligible, he looks 50 and he's playing mid-30s, he's absolutely insane, and the single greatest reason to check out this movie. The script itself isn't really all that much to write home about. It really does just feel like some kind of old adventure game show, only instead of getting members of the public in to solve the puzzles for prizes, there is no prize and the public are hired actors. There's not really much in the way of nuance to this thing, it's quite literally, here puzzle, solve puzzle, nearly fail puzzle, pass puzzle, next puzzle, over and over again. But what I will say is, this thing's mercifully short, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and given the nature of this production, it being low no budget, some of the plot twists and puzzle elements are genuinely out of the ordinary and would have been surprising even in bigger budgeted productions. The pacing is a bit on the lumpy side, there are moments where things slow down because they can't figure out a way to show us what the puzzle is, and so we have extended monologues while our characters bash out exactly what the terms of the puzzle are, and then they'll spend even longer saying out loud their methodology for solving it. Those moments were the closest this thing came to losing my interest, but because things do move with such a clip, it more often than not managed to pull me back in just as it was starting to get a little too slow. Don't go into this thing expecting anything too cerebral, however, this is YA territory in terms of the complexity of the puzzles being presented, and our characters make sure to go into great detail at every stage, meaning you don't really have to think too hard at any point in this thing, honestly. Beyond the puzzles, the film spoon-feeds you context heavily too, the pre-recorded messages basically set up the whole plot with no emotion, only depth, the characters will randomly stop to monologue their character's backstory or thought processes to the point that you basically know what they ate for breakfast, and the end plot twist was both surprising and very stupid in equal measure. I didn't see it coming, and when it happened I laughed my arse off for about 3 minutes solid. The dialogue as well is just so juvenile. Now, admittedly the script was written and directed by someone whose first language isn't English, but even so this thing borders on cheap Italian cinema dubbed into English territory for how the lines are written. And that's before we get to the delivery, which in and of itself is just wild. The combination creates a film that feels altogether novel as far as these low-budget features go, but is taken to the next level when all these standalone eccentricities are melded together. It's absolutely not competent, but I had a real hoot with it. The script was written and directed by Bozadar D. Benedict. He has 7 writing credits and 9 directing credits for 4 features and 5 shorts. He's directed everything he's written, and he describes himself as a Grand Master of Literature on his personal website. His last film was in 2007 before he left the industry to take up a career writing religious spiritual thriller fiction. A genre I had no idea even existed until now, but apparently it does. He's also featured in the documentary about this film that's included on the DVD release, where it's revealed that for a number of years he's been working in a local multiplex helping keep the place clean and run the projectors. He seems like a genuine and endearing chap with a long history in both filmmaking and projecting, and I think I could happily hear him talk about the old days of cinema for a good long while. On the direction front? Well, given the circumstances that were going on behind the scenes on the film, I'm actually kind of impressed. Where do I even begin with this one? Well, for a starters, Bozadar was generally used to shooting with a small crew, and this was, I believe, his first film shooting with something a bit larger. The crew had one idea of how they wanted it filming, and Bozadar had a completely different and very specific vision in mind instead. As a result, that caused a lot of friction, which was only compounded by the fact that they were up against the clock on a very limited budget with very hard stop and start times for filming. Going one further, Bonnie Beck, who played Wendy in this, was in a thing with Gary Friedman, a lawyer who was incredibly protective of her and massively disliked and distrusted Lazar Rockwood. Allegedly, he'd hang around the set, and when things came up that he felt weren't in Bonnie's interest, he'd kick off. Not to mention all of the bombastic side-eye he gave Lazar, or the massive stink he kicked up about what Bonnie and Lazar could do in their love scene. Which makes it all the more surprising that the direction on this thing, while far from great, is actually pretty damn okay given the circumstances. This was shot on film but edited and released on video, and as such a lot of people seem to think this is an SOV feature. It wasn't really shot on video though. So it actually ended up looking quite a bit cleaner than a lot of SOV movies that did come out at this time did. It's no masterpiece, there's a lot of shooting for function over style and a lot of very flat profile work and what feels like a lot of one shot and done no retakes happening. But when compared to some of the movies that I've seen that were shot on film and edited on tape, well, this thing's actually nowhere near the bottom of the barrel. It's kind of average for the low, no-budget film scene. But I feel like the pressure that was put on the filmmakers has yielded overall mixed to positive results. The scenes that feel a bit rushed actually only accentuate the strange vibe this thing gives off, and I can kind of get behind it. Direction of the cast, by contrast, though, is frankly hilarious. I don't believe Bozadar had any control over Lazar during this production. He wrote the role specifically for him, and I am damn convinced that the guy basically just told Lazar what was going to happen in the scene and then let him rip through the thing in whatever way he wanted. Everything feels very hands-off from a casting direction standpoint, and for overly animated performers like Lazar, that's great, because that's where the fun, wacky weirdness comes in. But for the rest of the cast, the ones who rely on thorough and clear instructions as to what's happening, how they're to deliver lines, what their entry point is, the spots they need to hit and where their exits are, it must have been a nightmare working with a loose cannon and seemingly being given almost nothing in terms of how to actually get through the thing. Not to mention having your jealous boyfriend at the time threatening to lights out the lead actor if he kisses you for a smidge too long. I love this thing. Same goes for the Cine. This is by no means a pretty film with a lot of static, flat profile and fairly muted shots compiled into fairly by-the-number sequences. But there are a few moments where this thing does flourish, a couple of examples being, and very mild spoilers here, a sequence where they have to solve a word puzzle on the ground, and when they step on the last correct letter, the tile they're stood on lowers like an elevator into the next puzzle room. Which I thought was really cool and out of the box for something made on 20p in a fight. The underwater sequences are really solid as well. I mean, they largely remain above the water and dry, but they're still quite interesting and well handled given that water shoots are often considered some of the most difficult stuff to film, let alone film well. There's nothing really standout about how this film is structured, edited, or in its looks. It's just a fairly basic, generic affair, but those small flourishes really did help to take the thing up just a tiny bit to something altogether more engaging. But easily, the main reason to check this film out is the performances. Everyone is doing melodramatic ham. Everyone clearly has little to no previous professional acting experience, and every single scene has at least one absolutely hilarious delivery. This honestly is proto-Room level performance work for the most part. And I know The Room gets tossed around a lot as a hyperbole shortcut to say this film's so bad it's good, but here, I'm being genuinely serious. You could easily play these two films back to back as a double feature and you'd think they were made by the same filmmakers. I'd love to get Lazar Rockwood and Tommy Wiseau into a room together and just record the conversation for an hour. Hell, in an ideal world I'd love to see a movie where Lazar and Tommy play a father and son going on a road trip. And for added kicks, I'm not going to tell you who'd play the father or son, because I'm sure no one would agree on the right way round for that one. Lazar's incredible in this, easily worth the price of admission. He's totally tone deaf, fails to deliver a single line believably, but he's so sincere in his attempts to deliver the lines, it makes it twice as entertaining when he absolutely just cannot do it. He's the kind of actor who thinks an animated performance means just throw yourself about as aggressively as possible with no thought put into it. And while I know he can't help this, his accent is just so thick in places, it sounds like an audible mumbling. Also, the guy smokes like a chimney. If you took a shot every time his character has a cigarette in this, you'd be in A&E within the hour. Only exacerbating Lazar's scene chewery, Bonnie Beck plays her part almost completely muted and B-movie bad. She only has two modes, super melodramatic and awkwardly dry. That's it. Which makes Lazar's performances look all the more unhinged and strange. She's not great in honesty, much too stiff and unresponsive in my opinion. She ends up completely overshadowed by the rest of the cast, and given there's only 4 main cast members and one of them is dead for the full 5 to 10 minutes that they're on screen, that's saying something. Speaking of the dead, it also needs to be mentioned that there's a scene with a dead guy in it for 5 to 10 minutes played by a chap called Ben Kerr. I'm not too well versed with my Canadian folk legends, but apparently Kerr was a very eccentric musician and health nut who repeatedly ran for the mayor of Toronto. One year getting nearly 30,000 votes. He was apparently a much-loved eccentric of the city who would spend his days offering reassurance and advice to passers-by while singing upbeat songs. He was so well loved that they named a street after him. And in this film's most bizarre moment, there's a Boris and Wendy love scene that happens about 2/3 of the way into the film, and super slowly they crossfade from them drifting out of shot to get it on, into Ben's cold, dead watching eyes. It caught me off guard so hard that I had to pause the film and reevaluate my life choices. And finally, the soundtrack. It's super cheap synth work, but you know, it suits the tone of the film and works about fine enough. It's far from perfect, but it's inoffensive, if not a smidge repetitive. I kinda liked it, but unremarkable is probably the best thing I can say about it. Beyond the Seventh Door was completed and screened in 1987, and from there, things get murky. From what I can gather, the film played multiple times through the late 80s and early 90s on Canadian cable TV, but I can't find any kind of home video release for it. It quite literally must have only existed as a bootleg and in the minds of many a late-night Canadian for the better part of 3 decades. That is until 2017, when the film was given an official home release by Intervision Pictures. In the decades since the film's completion, the original film elements have unfortunately either been lost, destroyed, or misplaced, because what's presented here is a very high-quality VHS transfer of the film, alongside a making-of which was very insightful, and a brief feature on Ben Kerr. The picture quality is pretty decent given the age and quality of the materials used, barring the original elements turning up in a full ground-up rescanning and reconstruction in HD. This is probably the best this film will look, and the extras really help complement and add context to just how this bizarre little work managed to make its way out into the world. It's a really solid release that's now sadly out of print, but there are plenty of copies floating around on Amazon and eBay, and at the time of recording the prices for this one are actually pretty reasonable, though they are starting to creep up a little bit. So if you are interested in checking this one out, or you think you might be interested, I'd say now is the time to pull the trigger, honestly. All in all, Beyond the Seventh Door lacks nuance, quality, and detail that could have helped otherwise really help set it ahead of a lot of films in its weight class. It tells a hell of a lot more than showing, the direction is basic and the cine is flat and largely to standard. But what it lacks in technicality and depth, it more than makes up for in cheese, with unusual and weird characters trapped in confined conditions with little to no telling exactly how this thing is going to go. I can honestly say that I was genuinely riveted by this thing, and it's more than earned a pride of place on my shelf. One to show to those folks who want to get into bad movies but have only seen the more obvious choices, I think this is a great stepping stone into the world of either low no budget filmmaking or a step towards getting someone into SOV cinema. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I reckon you will too.